You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the grow your own food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Do you want to save money at the grocery store, eat more organic, whole foods, cultivate food security, and feel more connected to the earth? If so, then growing your own food is a no-brainer. You wouldn't believe how many people come to me claiming that they can't grow their own food. They think they don't have enough space, that they're too busy, or that they simply don't have what it takes. Perhaps you've fallen for one of these gardening myths. If you think you can't grow food, or if you think the only food that you have access to is what you buy in the grocery store, I have a life-changing webinar that you need to see. It's free and will help you unearth your inner gardener. I've helped thousands of people just like you learn to grow their own food, and I'm speaking from my own experience when I say that with the right knowledge in place, there is no such thing as a black thumb. With this webinar, you can begin making your garden dreams come true and start growing delicious, nutritious food for your family. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or go to iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food. Remember, that's GARDEN to 44222 or iwanttogarden.com. Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have Andrew Gunther to talk about humanely raised farm animals. Andrew is the executive director of A Greener World, where he spearheaded the growth and development of the Animal Welfare Approved, or AWA, certification into what Consumer Report calls the only highly meaningful food label for farm animal welfare, outdoor access, and sustainability. Andrew works to increase the availability of AWA certified dairy, meat, and eggs in traditional retail settings. He is currently a member of the U.S. delegation for the International Standardization Organization, who is responsible for the development of standards relating to animal welfare. Welcome to the show today, Andrew.
Hey, thanks. Great to be on.
So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at now?
Yeah, I mean, I listened to that sort of bio and I think, wow, is that really me? Because I don't know that it's been a job or a path. I've been really unlucky in life to have a path that's allowed me to work with amazing farmers and great team members and, just a really interested group of consumers. And what we've been able to do is, find a set of standards that are published online, and then audit some farmers to those standards and then put a seal on that product, which lets the consumer really understand how the animal was raised that produced either the milk or the dairy or, in fact, was slaughtered for the meat that's on their table.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So how did you get to the point of not doing this to really being, shall we say, super conscious about where our food comes from?
I think my own journey was, I'm a country guy by birth, always knew where my food came from, always knew that, a dairy cow produced milk and a chicken produced eggs and beef cow produced beef and a sheep produced lamb and, all of those, a hog produces pork. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of just ingrained in me. And then as my age and years moved on from farming, I found that actually quite a lot of people have lost contact with exactly how their food is produced. And it became, a passion and a driver for me. And then, how do you, if you stood in a supermarket, you stood at the farmer's market, how do you know that you're actually being told the truth when you see that sort of, that gorgeous bucolic picture of a cow stood in grass with the word natural underneath it, and you go, what the heck does natural mean? Oh, that must be good. It says natural. Natural things are good. Well, actually natural, as far as the USDA, FSIS, that's the USDA food labeling folks are concerned, actually means minimally processed. No more, no less. It doesn't mean it was raised on grass or outdoors. Minimally processed. So, as I said, it was just very easy for me to try and work with a group of great people to say, well, actually, this is what our standard means. It's not negotiable. We're voluntary. We don't force you to come and join us, and we don't charge for our certification services. We're not for profit, so we raise the money to do the auditing, which helps the farmer differentiate themselves in the marketplace.
Oh, nice. So tell us about a greener world.
So what we have to do sometimes is we have to talk about the differences in farm animal production systems. We have to talk about how these systems work. And we're certified by ISO, which is International Standardization Organization, which is a really huge mouthful. But what it means is actually my auditors are audited each year by another organization to make sure that they are consistent and up to speed on what they're doing. So we're certified to 1765. So each year I have auditors that come through the organization. But what that means is we're not really allowed in animal welfare approved or the grass-fed certification or the non-GMO certification, we're not allowed to market those particular seals on behalf of farmers and things. So a greener world is the organization that lifts up the farmers doing those amazing things, that are working all of those hours out in the fields with the animals to produce the amazing product that the consumers can buy. So we've got a greener world which actually exists just to do exactly that, which is to educate consumers and to publish documents about, things like we published a document called A Breath of Fresh Air, which was to deal with a lot of this information that we're all hearing about how bad beef is. Well, actually, not all beef is bad, right, and not all vegetables are good. I mean, good food is a production system. It's not actually a product. So a vegetable can be pretty awful, raised with tons of herbicides and pesticides, in the same way that beef can be pretty awful, raised on tons of hormones and antibiotics. But again, right, it's sort of, not all meat is good, not all vegetables are bad, not all vegetables are bad, not all meat is good.
Yeah. What I hear you saying is really a big piece of this is what's going into it.
I think there's a lot of science, in terms of a couple of areas. Let's look at animal handling. We know that if you put an animal under stress during or just before slaughter, the quality of the meat just goes through the floor. It's horrid. They're called dark cutters, or in pigs they get blood spots, or in chickens they get blood spots. But also if you look at just some of the fatty acids in a beef profile, there are some fatty acids that aren't good for you, some of the 6s, whereas there are an absence of 6s and a little bit of 3, and I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon that if you want omega-3, eat grass-fed beef. If you want omega-3, go ahead and eat fish. It's a pretty good source of. But in terms of a healthful meat protein as part of a balanced diet, then you should really be eating grass-fed or pasture-based beef.
Yeah. This whole certification program, what does it look like from a farmer's perspective?
Now, it's quite interesting because we've just sort of done a little bit of a pivot on this. I think the first word I would say was terrifying, because you're having this gold standard organization out to your farm to look at your farm and look at your farming practices. And most farmers are, quite quiet people who want to get on with their life and enjoy what they're doing. So, it's a big step to say, hey, I'm going to come and get somebody to validate what I'm doing. But what we've put in place is a system by you instantly, before you join the program, you're already talking to somebody if you want to. You can come in cold. That's up to you. You can fill out the application form online and then, but we've got some folks who'll talk to you and answer any concerns you might have, any, am I doing okay? And at the end of the day, we're not there to pass judgment. We're just there to say, hey, does your farm comply with our published standards? And then we have an eligibility coordinator, and they phone up, and they've got a really deep agricultural background. And most of the time, as far as I can understand, they talk about kids in college. But generally, they're supposed to talk about how the farms run. But it's just the really friendly face of our organization, because we're farmer-centric. We believe that farmers are the custodians of the countryside, and without our farmers, we wouldn't have the society we have today. And we're always sad when people don't have a big shout-out and a big recognition for the farmers that are out there day and night producing food for the world.
Amen to that. That is epic.
Oh, I appreciate that. I mean, it's just who we are. I mean, it is. They are responsible for the countryside, and we've been very disrespectful as a society to our agricultural and rural communities with our sort of one-size-fits-all attitude.
Yeah. So that's from the farmer's perspective. Now, from a consumer's perspective, what can I expect out of the AWA?
So basically, if you buy a product that has an AWA label on it, the farm has applied to our program. It's been audited by a highly professional auditor. They've either got an agriculture degree or a minimum of 5 years agricultural experience in the species they're auditing. The animal's been audited to our published standards online. That the slaughter plant, if the animal is in fact a meat product, the slaughter plant's been visited annually, or at least every 18 months in its cycle, to ensure that the animal is slaughtered, as painlessly as is scientifically possible, and that person is being visited annually to ensure that compliance. So you're guaranteed the product that you actually think you're getting. So, if you buy an AWA piece of beef, it's never been in a feedlot. It's always had some green stuff under its feet. Although in the winter, in some parts of the U.S., it can get so dang cold that we ask the farmer to take some protective action and find a building so the animals can get out of the insane weather. Right. As we found out in some of the terrible snows, there were vast mortality numbers in farms where farmers just didn't have buildings, yes, or banks or trees to keep the animals protected. So what you will be buying is a product that's gone through all of that third-party validation, and we don't charge the farmer, they don't pay us, so we've really got no reason to say yes. We're not incentivized to improve farms. We're not incentivized to make our standards. You look at some organizations where they have these gradiated programs where they have lower levels and which are basically confinement feeding, and they're marketing those with the bucolic pictures of animals outdoors. That isn't what this is about. And one of the reasons I think Consumers Union like us is that we're pretty much who we say we are on the tin. So
what I'm really curious about is, the beginnings of A Greener World, how it got started, who started it, and why did it get started?
Well, that's a really deep question. So basically, Animal Welfare Approved was kind of the original vehicle that got us to where we are, and we grew and we grew and we grew, and we were with a charity, and we were a program of that charity, and we just kind of outgrew it. We became more people in AWA than was in there. But also one of the other things is that some of our farmers do other great things. So they do some environmental stuff and they do some social stuff, and we wanted to be cognizant that it wasn't just about the welfare of the animal. There's also the fact that we don't use, routine use of herbicides and pesticides are prohibited in our program, and we restrict the use of GMs. But we were outgrowing, basically, we started off as a petulant teenager and grew into an adolescent and grew into an adult, and we had to have our own charity to get that. So, the team got together and we started A Greener World, and we got recognized in November with our own IRS not-for-profit status. So it's an organization in its own right. If folks want to give us some money at Christmas, we love it, because we don't charge fees for what we do, and we spend an awful lot of time and energy promoting our farmers, because we think we can change in a free market. You should, with transparent information, to be able to be transformative. Right.
So whose idea was this?
That's a really good question. I think all of ours, really, the whole team. I'm the one that's allegedly driven it, but I have a team of great people who make decisions with me. It's not sort of like, just one of us.
Yeah, I'm looking at your list. There's, 25 or 30 people on your staff?
We have, I think, 21 whole-time, and then we probably have 18 consultants that hang around with us. Yeah.
I bet they have fun, huh?
Well, they're the guys that go out and do the auditing. So I think if you've traveled in your life, they get to see some great farms and hang out with some great farmers, and lots of time eat great farm food. But it gets tiresome, I think, after a few years.
No, there you go. There you go. So how long have you been around?
Doing what we're doing, this is year 9, I think.
Wow. How cool is that? So I just want to do a shout out to you. This is an epic moment, because basically you took this idea and you turned it into really a national certification. And you did it because you said so. I'm taking it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a really good. I appreciate you for saying that. We don't normally think about it like that. Yeah, that's what we did. It worked. We have some really, really great folks in the program, staff and farmers. So, yeah, I mean, we drove it. We drive it like we are IBM. We drive it like we're like iPhone. It's a brand. It's important. Well, and it's a farmer-owned brand, as it were, although they don't actually own it. They are the reason it exists. Without our farmers, we wouldn't exist, and without the people that care about what they eat, we wouldn't exist. So, yes, that's what we do.
Wow. Yeah, and the reason I brought that particular one up is because I say all the time, the way things get done in the world is somebody says, this is going to happen because I said so, and they go out and do it. And it's amazing to me how many people come to me with ideas. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's a really great idea. And then, 2 years later, nothing's happened. So it really is an amazing, epic thing when you start out and you say, we're going to do this. And, here you are 9 years later and it's done.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a huge accolade. The only thing I'm going to challenge you on is it's not done. There are other countries. We're in the midst of by osmosis because I think, as a society, whether you're a European society or American society, we've wanted to dominate the rest of the world and put our thinking and our approach onto the rest of the world. We're taking a slightly different approach. We're just working now in South Africa, and we've appointed an ED, and they're going to appoint their own team and get their own charity together in South Africa, and then by osmosis, they're going to take everything we've got and use it in South Africa. And then we're working with another organization in Zimbabwe to do the same thing, and a little bit in Mexico, because actually we think one of the things we can do is say, hey, this is about everything we've made, and a few more that we haven't made yet. So we've made those mistakes, don't make them, and here's a program that works really well. Make it fit, your society, your community, your system, and we'll be your mentors to hand it off. And that's kind of our really big vision is let's give control of agriculture back to farmers and consumers and take some of the BS marketing out of it. Yeah.
Another epic moment. Wow. You just keep, my friend, although I've never met him personally, is John Lee Dumas. He does Entrepreneur on Fire. He calls these value bombs. Yeah, that is just another one. It's like, wow, so much value in what you just shared with us. Thank you.
Hey, I appreciate it. I mean, we just see it as the right thing to do. I mean, we have a good team.
Right. And the cool thing is you're building community, and really a big way of us transforming the world moving forward is building out our communities.
It's a really interesting point, that, isn't it? Because I think giving power back to the community will get rid of an awful lot of the garbage we're suffering today.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'm walking into the grocery store, call it Whole Foods or your local grocery store. What am I looking for on an AWA certified?
So you'd have to go online to get a picture of it because I can't really describe it, but it's a sort of a 5-sided seal with a little hill and a barn at the back of it, and the words animal welfare approved up the middle of it. And if it hasn't got that on, it ain't animal welfare approved. It's that simple. We don't have any other style of talking about it. We're very careful about how we track it. We have to approve all labels, and then particularly for meat products, we work with FSIS to make sure that the seal is put there legally. Right. And if you go to www.animalwelfareapproved.us, you can see the seal front and center. And while you're there, you might like to explore a labeling guide that we made. Oh. It used to be called Labeling for Dummies. The guys wrote it for me. And it sort of picks out some of the more imaginative label claims that people come up with that actually mean absolutely nothing.
Well, like what?
Hormone-free on a turkey when it's illegal to feed turkeys hormones. Antibiotic-free, which basically all meat by law is antibiotic-free, and antibiotic-free is not the issue. It is the abuse and misuse of antibiotics that's causing antibiotic resistance that's the issue. So what we try and do is help consumers, find their way through the myriad of BS that they're being inundated with in the store.
Right. So you have 3 different kinds of certifications.
Yes, sir.
Please tell me what they are.
So we have animal welfare approved, which is the animal-centric, all about the care of the animal and how that animal interacts with the land. So the animal has to be on pasture and range. You can't overfeed the animal on any given substance to make it grow too quickly and upset its stomach. One of the reasons we get problems with E. coli in beef and others is that we feed a cow a very hot ration, which makes its rumen very acidic.
Oh, yes.
And then the bacteria in the rumen or the E. coli become over time resistant to acid. Well, guess what? Our stomachs cure E. coli because we eat E. coli all the time.
Yeah.
All the time in our life, we're consuming bacteria. We just have a nice, one hopes, flora and fauna in our gut that is able to deal with those things. So low level E. coli, our own acid will deal with it. But on a confinement feeding beef operation, we're producing an E. coli that our gut can't tolerate.
Right.
So acid-resistant E. coli. So we avoid those. That no animal's been mutilated, so we haven't chopped horns off with a chainsaw or castrated something. Pardon me?
Clipped beaks.
Absolutely not, because you have tip, trim, and debeak, and right at the tip of the animal's beak is a really sensitive series of nerves, which allow them to, sense when they're pecking and eating their food. So no, that's completely prohibited.
Yeah.
So is any kind of work around the animal's claws or toes, particularly in poultry. Obviously, in other species, sheep and goats, there is some trimming needed, so we would require you to keep the animal's feet healthy.
Wow.
Basically, the animal's having a fairly bucolic life up until that last, 30 seconds.
Right.
And even then, all the science is pretty clear that if you use the correct method, the insensibility is instantaneous.
Right.
And then it just becomes one of those moral conversations, and that's up to you as a person. I'm not going to tell you not to eat meat, and I'm not going to tell you to eat meat.
Right.
I'm just going to say our farmers do it this way, and if that suits your thinking, then you should buy it.
Exactly. And that's really what I propose around my teachings is, because I'm vegetarian and leaning toward vegan, and that's what works for me, and I really encourage people to discover what works for them. So that's a really important piece of this.
This is a tough one, but everybody should know where their food comes from.
Oh, yes.
And make a decision based on that.
Yep, exactly. So that was one certification. You have two other kinds. What are they?
So basically the second one, which is grass-fed, it was sort of market response because some of our farmers, their consumers have picked up that grass-fed is something they should be looking for.
Right.
And we were on farm anyway. So the grass-fed certification is an adjunct to. You cannot get it without being AWA. So you have to be animal welfare approved. And then you can be grass-fed.
Right.
Because obviously you can feed grass to animals in not enough and with not enough protein. And that's not good either. You can have welfare issues with insufficient protein and nutrition. So we felt, one had to be on top of the other. And then again, I think, we introduced the non-GMO claim because some of our farmers were being required by their buyers to be non-GMO, and it was costing them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So we just set up a system that was sort of at cost, which made it much cheaper for farmers to get certified. Because a lot of our farmers cooperate, collaborate, work together, and they're slightly smaller, and they may be making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year, but they then can't afford to pay $1,500 or $2,000 more to have a non-GM certification on top of it.
Exactly.
So we got to try and help folks in this marketplace get above. Again, I'm come back to this time and time again. The snake oil salesmen, the liars and the cheats.
Yep.
They've got grass-fed beef when in fact it saw a blade of grass thrown over the top of the pen at one.
Yeah.
I don't know how much your listeners know. You'll know that basically right now, most of the marketing claims in the U.S. are made by affidavit.
Right.
The letter from mum. Nobody actually goes and says, well, are you really doing this?
Right.
Is this physically what's happening? And that's a problem.
That's a big problem. Absolutely. Well, thank you for all that awesome information. I actually learned a lot from that.
That's cool.
Yeah, real cool. Thanks. So I'm going to shift on you, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you might have learned from it.
So, I mean, it's a really, really interesting question because actually there isn't a time. There's lots of times.
Yeah.
Lots of times we try things and they don't work, and you have to pivot and move your position. Now, what I like to think is I normally pivot and move based on fact and new information. I tend not to pivot and move, because I've had another idea. We try to plan if we can. But I think, just let me bring one forward. I don't know whether, one of my moves really sort of, coming to the US to work for a retailer, thinking I could change the world from the inside, and finding out that actually I wasn't cut out to work inside a retailer. I really wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't, I wasn't cut out to be a corporation. So what did I learn from that was to not keep going, because it can make you really unhealthy and unhappy if you're doing something that's not working out for you and it's not cool and it's not right. So I think, probably one of my biggest failures was to take a job without thinking about it really in depth and was it right for me, but it was exciting and I could think I could change the world. And then, the second biggest failure was to hang on too long, because it cost me emotionally. But then, this is the big then, and I didn't want to say it at the beginning of the statement. Actually, there's no such thing as failure, provided you learn from it.
Yeah.
It's education and experience. I think it's kind of how you see it. Was it Rabbi Burns who was hiding in a cave where he came up with the statement, if at first you don't succeed, try again. And he was actually watching a spider trying to anchor a web. So it's kind of like, never see anything as failure provided you learn from it, and never be frightened to try anything.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So what do you consider your biggest success?
Oh, that's easy. Family. My wife and 2 boys. Awesome. That's that easy. Everything else that I've worked on or achieved has been with other people. So if you said our biggest success, it's probably AWA, AGW as a team. I think that's what it has to be. It's really personal. It's just family. We've been together now 25 years as a couple, and as a family, 23.
Yeah. I got asked recently in an interview, what is my most prized possession? And they were looking for something tangible. And for me, that answer, yeah, exactly. For me, that answer was my relationship with my sweetie Heidi. It's like truly.
You got it.
Yeah, exactly. So what drives you?
I have no clue what drives me because I'm nuts. I actually think we can make a difference. I'm the product of a single mom, had a very liberal upbringing. I have a terrible social conscience. I think we've got to be good to the rest of the world, and we've got to try and do the right thing. That's what drives me. I get up every day wanting to get more farms converted. I get up every day wanting to see more acreage, and I get up every day wanting to, help other people lift themselves up to a much better. And I'm not on about becoming a millionaire or driving a Bugatti Veyron or whatever it is. Is that really success? Is that how you value success?
Yeah.
I think success is valued by happiness.
Yeah.
And contentness and all of those things. So, that's what drives me every day, to be as good as I can be and to get better and to learn.
Yeah. So I'm gonna throw a curveball at you right now. This is one of those unexpected questions, but it's just it's whispering at me that I need to ask it, and that is, I want you to think about the past 9 years and that one farmer or that one farm that just like really stands out. Do you have one of those epic moments with those farmers?
Yeah, easy. So it starts with a failure. I booked a plane to the wrong airport.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So I land in Denver and I get to the car hire place and I put in Thermopolis, Wyoming.
Oh my gosh.
Ka-ching, 9 hours.
Wow.
Drive, brother, drive.
Yeah.
So we drove, and we got to Thermopolis, Wyoming, which, if anybody wants to go on vacation to somewhere spectacularly beautiful,
Yeah.
Thermopolis, Wyoming. Oh, wow. So, we get there, and, as luck would have it, we were going to come in the night before, so all that happened is we just hadn't slept.
Right.
And I get there the next morning, and I drive down a road, and I get to the ranch HQ, and I get out. This amazing guy just steps up, and, we get chatting. And as an auditor, as somebody who's looking at a ranch or a farm, the first thing you say is, hey, tell me what your boundaries are.
Mm-hmm.
What you're trying to do is get a feel for what they're farming and what it looks like and all those sort of things. And he said to me, can you see that mountain? And I said, yeah, of course I can. He said, the other side of that mountain is one boundary. And then he looked right, and he said, can you see that hill? And I'm like, you mean the one in the distance? He said, yeah. He said, we're on the top of that one too. And I'm stood in the middle of 554,000 acres of native grassland being farmed for beef cattle.
Wow.
And I've written a few blogs on Huff and down, and I wrote one on the way home on my experience of there, because everything about this place was pretty much as nature sort of intended. It was full of native flowers, and it was the home ranch of the Arapaho family. Mm-hmm. And my own learning of how the family operate, how the farm operates, how the councils operate, and how people interact still with our First Nation is not cool. We still aren't as respectful as we should be. The only good news for me is that when we stole all the land from them, we left them with all the grassland.
Oh, yes.
And truly sustainable agriculture, which is going to help us keep carbon in the ground, and is going to help us produce, meat protein with a light footprint, is actually owned pretty much by most of our First Nation families. So, that was the most amazing day of my life, which started up with a massive mistake.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was in the car, he was going to shoot me.
I'll tell you what, when you were sharing it, I was feeling it, so...
Yeah, well, I mean, it's there's another one on the negative side of it. I went to see a bison operation. I can't say where, and I was being shown around this bison operation, and they were stood in defensive circles. And I asked the operator, how long did they stand like that? And they said, pretty much as the time they're in here. Because we took a wild animal and panned it up. So, yeah, I can get pretty emotional about some of my work, but that was just, for me, just unbelievably majestic. And they talked about a wolf and how the family would ride with. So when a wolf pack grew and the dogs became a menace, Mum would say, hey, dudes, it's time to leave. I'm waiting for my wife to say that. Hey, dudes, it's time to leave. Uh-huh. And then one of the tribe, one of the family, would ride with the male wolf as it left the range so that it didn't interact with their cattle. How cool is that? I mean, they didn't want to shoot it. They didn't want to net it. They didn't want to be violent. They just rode with it in spirit until it left, where they could be a risk to cattle. And I learned a lot from that particular experience and my relationship with them over years. And it's sad that we don't actually work with them at the moment because their supplier for pasture beef evaporated. So sadly, they now sell all these cattle into feedlots. But yeah, it was a fairly meaningful, amazing day. And then on the smaller scale was the story of a young lady who we were really honored to certify. She has about 4 acres. Called Happy Chap Chicken Ranch, and her mum was poorly, and they needed some money. Uh-huh. So she started the leg industry. She ended up selling dozens and dozens of eggs, and not only paid off her mum's hospital bills, but helped her way through college.
Wow!
And we feel like part of her family too, because she graduates.
Yeah. Wow, cool. Well, thank you for those great stories. I knew there had to be some good ones there. So I'm all about education, and I have to know, is there a book that's been influential for you in this process?
There has. I mean, Kalnak's Diseases of Poultry helps me be a really good poultry person. But I think I have to say probably Michael Pollan's Omnivore's Dilemma, because he was the cause, realistically, of my journey to the U.S. was to sort of, work with Whole Foods Market to bring their local programs out as a result of Michael's criticism of Whole Foods. So, it was one of those things that it had a huge influence on my life. And, I think Michael is amazing. He's one of these people that will admit when he doesn't know. He's one of these people who will tell you what he thinks from his heart. But he made that statement, if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. And it was one of those like Wendell Berry type, Michael Pollan type statements, when Wendell speaks and you get these little gems. And so when Michael says, if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't eat it, it's like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
So that was the book. It had a ton of influence on my life, but, I'm an avid reader of fiction.
Yeah. You and me too. Yeah. So you and me too. Yeah, that was Michael Pollan, Omnivore's Dilemma. Perfect.
Yeah.
So what one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
I always say it's really, really simple. Spend as much time looking at how your food is produced as you do in buying a new car or booking a holiday. I am always stunned when people spend 3 weeks research on which car to buy and they buy garbage food in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
If you can do that, we can change the world. If you can demand food that's raised, outdoors on pasture and range, if you can, demand retailers track where their food comes from, it's a free market. You, the consumer, have the ability right now to change the way the world farms. Yeah. Take it. That's all you got to do.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Andrew.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the show you do and all the work you guys are doing.
Oh, you bet.
We're always so honored to be on these shows.
Well, thank you. So how can our listeners find you?
So if you want to go, just start at the top, www.agreenerworld.org. That'll take you into, the overhead, the high level. You can see some of the opportunities that face farmers. You can see some of the challenges that agricultural systems produce. And then the seals are, the websites for all the seals are on drop downs from that site. And we answer questions personally. If somebody wants to find out something, we'll always talk to them. We love working with folks, and change is going to be impacted by people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm also on your website right now, and there is a tab called Directory, so we can actually find AWA certified stuff.
You can.
Yeah.
In the moment, we're just working on a new website because when we built it, we were sort of slightly budgeted, and somebody said it's absolutely awful and you need to improve it. So they're helping us do that.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, you can find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/a greener world. And that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Do you want to save money at the grocery store? Eat more organic, whole foods? Cultivate food security and feel more connected to the earth? If so, then growing your own food is a no-brainer. You wouldn't believe how many people come to me claiming that they can't grow their own food. They think they don't have enough space, that they're too busy, or that they simply don't have what it takes. Perhaps you've fallen for one of these gardening myths. If you think you can't grow food, or if you think the only food that you have access to is what you buy in the grocery store, I have a life-changing webinar that you need to see. It's free and will help you unearth your inner gardener. I've helped thousands of people just like you learn to grow their own food, and I'm speaking from my own experience when I say that with the right knowledge in place, there is no such thing as a black thumb. With this webinar, you can begin making your garden dreams come true and start growing delicious, nutritious food for your family. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or go to iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food. Remember, that's garden to 44222 or iwanttogarden.com.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.